Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post. The tariffs on China are destroying massive numbers of their factories. From CNN Business, China's factories take a big blow as Trump's tariffs bite. And from the New York Times, inside factories in China, a struggle to survive Trump's tariffs. And these were factories that were already in trouble, and a lot of them unable to pay their workers. Now it's just getting worse. From Radio Free Asia, protests by unpaid Chinese workers spread amid factory closures. This isn't about getting severance. This isn't about trying to set you up for the future. This is about some of these guys have not been paid since last February or January. They have back money owed to them, and now they're not getting it. And what makes things worse for China is they have less leverage than they even thought they had. Because certain imports from the United States, China absolutely needs to operate. China is very big in making plastics. They cannot make plastics unless they get some specific import from the United States. China creates lists of US-made goods exempt from 125% tariffs, according to sources. And it includes building blocks for making plastic items. But it also includes other items. They're not in a very good position over in China. Most of what China imports, they actually really do need from the United States. They can get food from Brazil, but a lot of what they bring in, they absolutely must have or the country just can't function. And as a result of all this, from the New York Post, Chinese factory activity plunges near two-year low as Trump tariffs hammer trade. China's factory activity contracted at its fastest pace in 16 months in April, as steep U.S. tariffs took a heavy toll on the manufacturing sector, adding urgency to Beijing's efforts to roll out fresh economic stimulus. But there's no economic stimulus they can put out. They can give out free money as much as they want. But the country is an exporting country. If they don't export these products outside of China and get back real United States dollars, they can't pay for their food. They can't pay for their oil. They can't do business. They can't function. They have no consumer demand in China to support the jobs of the people that make these products. China cannot consume what it makes for the United States or what it makes for Europe. And so many of their factories are in such a bad situation that I've read reports that they can't even supply their European customers. Because even though there aren't massive tariffs coming at them from Europe, at least not yet, some of the things that they need to make their products, some of the scale they need, so the size of operations they need to be profitable, they can't even do that without the United States anchoring in a huge piece of business in US dollars to keep everything working. The Manufacturers Purchasing Index, also called PMI, fell to 49 in April, the weakest reading since December 2023, according to data released by the National Bureau of Statistics, the NBS, on this Wednesday. Any reading below 50 shows a contraction in business. A senior statistician at NBS said in a statement that the contraction in factory activity was due to sharp changes in the external environment and other factors. Well, that's not a surprise. They're getting destroyed in the trade war. The sharp decline underscores the damage that U.S. President Donald Trump's 145% tariffs on Chinese goods have already inflicted on the country's export and manufacturing reliant economy. Chinese manufacturers began to feel the brunt of the sky-high tariffs last month as order cancellations and production cuts spread, raising fresh concerns over the country's growth prospects. China as a country is uninvestable. You could not invest in these companies because these companies couldn't even tell you who their customers might be, let's say a week from now or a month from now, or let's say they make a deal and then it's 6 months from now. If they don't figure out how to make the United States extremely happy so that the United States will just continue to buy and there won't be any problems, it destroys these companies. They cannot withstand this instability. And the workers are in a really bad situation as well. And these are just people when it comes down to it, so you have to feel a little bit bad, but it's one country against another country, and I'm on the side of the United States. The April data marks a setback for Beijing as top leaders strive to maintain a defiant and confident posture amid Trump's trade war. The Chinese economy was already struggling with weak domestic consumption and a protracted property crisis because their apartments were built on essentially a Ponzi scheme. The Chinese didn't trust the stock market, so they wanted to buy a place to live, an apartment, fine. But they also had to invest in apartments as a way to store value. That got overexpanded, that got overbought. The money that came in from that, a lot of it got wasted. A lot of these even giant real estate companies were scamming the Chinese, and eventually they couldn't borrow anymore, and the developers started to fall apart like Evergrande. China lost its entire speculative market for real estate, which is to say no one can put money into real estate in China anymore and really expect it to go up in value because there's such a massive oversupply of it. Prices will be low for a very long time. Can you imagine if this ever happened to gold, where for some reason you could buy gold to make jewelry with it, but it wasn't investable? It's not something you could expect would hold its value. The price of gold would go down tremendously if it didn't have that speculative market. China's real estate was a massive investment class. A lot of people put their money there, and now it's in really bad shape. Robin Zing, chief China economist at Morgan Stanley, wrote in a Wednesday research note that the decline in PMI shows the impact of the tariffs, which has led to weakening external demand. Quote, we believe the tariff impact will be the most acute this quarter, as many exporters have halted their production and shipments to the U.S., given heightened tariff uncertainties. The overall policy framework remains reactive and supply-centric, inefficient to offset tariff shocks, which is to say what I said. There is nothing that the government of China can do to subsidize these manufacturers unless they were to buy everything the manufacturers were producing and just give everyone jobs. But they can't really do that. They can't just give people endless amounts of even their currency to produce things to do what? Set it on fire? The entire system is now broken. In response to the economic challenges, Beijing has begun rolling out modest measures since last year, including easier access to credit for struggling firms and steps to boost domestic consumption. And there's no domestic interest in all of these products. And the problem really is this. Even if everyone in China loved Christmas and loved American products, and they were going to buy all of these American products that were not going to be exported anymore to America, there would not be enough money to buy all of these products. Of course, they already have different tastes. They're not interested in the same products and goods. But the manufacturers are set up to produce massive amounts of things that exceed the demand of whatever could possibly be in China. The mismatch is just impossible. Metaphorically, it would be like owning a restaurant and saying, you know what, I don't have any more customers for my restaurant, so me and my family and a couple of my cousins will just go in every night and we'll just eat everything at the restaurant that the entire restaurant would have been producing for a normal amount of customers. And we'll just keep doing that. Every night, every day, every morning, we'll just keep going in and buying a full restaurant worth of food for us to consume for ourselves. That doesn't work, especially not in that one restaurant, and now multiply it by millions of other restaurants and millions of other kinds of businesses trying to consume everything they produce. They're not set up to consume what they produce in China. Government officials have so far stopped short of aggressive nationwide stimulus. Instead, Beijing has pledged targeted support to drive consumption and alleviate pressure on exporters and hinted at additional measures to be unveiled in the next few months. As if these guys could survive a few more months. They can't. At a government press conference on Monday, Zhao Zhenxin, the vice chairman of the National Development and Reform Commission, China's state planner, said Beijing had ample policy reserves to respond to economic needs and will accelerate the implementation of measures already laid out. None of that can work. On the same day, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi dismissed calls for a negotiated tariff truce with Washington, saying appeasement in the face of U.S. threats will only embolden the bully. His comments on the sidelines of a meeting in Rio de Janeiro echoed the message in a striking social media video shared by his ministry, calling on the international community to stand up to America's bully leader. All America is a massive customer of China. We just need a better deal than what we've been getting. And if we don't get it, you guys are going to have a lot of problems. You might want to start off with cutting off the fentanyl that you've been shipping into Mexico and Canada and sending to the United States. That would be a nice good faith effort, because if China does not do that, I can't imagine what's going to happen to China. It's probably not going to be good. And workers who are not making a fortune in China are having protest after protest because they're not getting paid and their companies are shutting down. And they're not looking for severance. They're not looking for could you just cover me for the next 6 months to 2 years until I can find something I really like? No, they're not doing that. They're talking about, hey, we're protesting because I'm not getting back wages from a couple of months ago, maybe February or January. From Radio Free Asia, protests by unpaid Chinese workers spread amid factory closures. Workers are demanding back wages from companies impacted by steep U.S. tariffs and an economic slowdown in China. And a lot of these companies, when they see they're not getting any more U.S. dollars and the owners are in trouble themselves, what do you think they're doing? They're cutting and they're running. A lot of them don't seem to care that much about the workers. And some of them might be good guys or bad guys, or I don't know. There's always some good people out there. There's always some bad people out there, but the workers are in a terrible situation. And these companies at this point now are becoming worthless because they don't have customers. Number one thing in business, you need to have customers. If you don't have customers, or at least one big customer, you don't really have a business. Protests by workers demanding back wages are spreading across China in a sign of growing discontent among millions suffering the brunt of factory closures triggered by steep U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports amid an economic downturn. China was already having financial problems. They didn't need this right now, but now they're going to deal with it. Across the country, hundreds of disgruntled workers have taken to the streets to protest about unpaid wages and to challenge unfair dismissals by factories that were forced to shut down due to the U.S. tariffs. Workers from Shangda Electronics Factory said the company, which manufactures flexible circuit boards, had not paid them wages since the start of the year and Social Security benefits for nearly 2 years since June 2023. Analysts at U.S.-based investment bank Goldman Sachs estimated that at least 16 million jobs across multiple industries in China are at risk due to U.S. President Donald Trump's imposition of a 145% tariff on Chinese imports. Goldman Sachs expects the Trump administration's tariff increases will significantly weigh on the Chinese economy, with slower economic growth likely to put further pressure on the country's labor market, particularly in export-related sectors, but even in other sectors as well, because it's a network. And if a bunch of companies goes out of business, then companies that used to interact with those companies, supply to some of those companies, buy some things from some of those companies, can also go out of business because they're interrelated. They do business with each other. This is going to be like a massive economic depression in China. In China's manufacturing industry, the communications equipment sector is likely to lose the most jobs, followed by apparel and chemical product sectors. Last week, hundreds of workers of Guanjin Sports Goods went on strike after the company's factory was shut down without paying employees their compensation or their Social Security benefits. You have to kind of go on strike before the company shuts down, but they're in big trouble out there. Workers at the company's factory, which produces sports protective gear and related accessories, said the company unfairly dismissed more than 100 female employees aged over 50 years in September 2024 on the grounds of reaching retirement age without paying them their wages or guiding them on retirement procedures. How can you say you've reached retirement age, so we're not going to pay you now? That is a little bit rough. And that was before all this took place, before the tariff war. Elsewhere in Inner Mongolia, which is also China, many construction workers gathered on the rooftops of Jinkan Royal Garden Community on April 25th, where they threatened to jump off the building if they were not paid the back wages they were due, according to another X video. Experts say the growing number of worker protests in China reflect the current crisis of poor management at some Chinese companies and signal deepening economic troubles for the country amid trade tensions with the United States. This could really destroy the entire social fabric of the country. What is the country about? What are the people about? What are they supposed to do when they get up in the morning? What should their family life be like? What is their work life going to be like? It's a disruption in a country like we've never seen before. Beijing-based activist Ji Fang, who was among the student leaders of the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests, said many Chinese business owners he met recently have complained bitterly about the difficulties they face, including the lack of business activity and money. Quote, some bosses even said that they would rather go to jail than do anything for their employees. He continued, quote, as long as there's a protest by workers, the company must find a way to borrow money to pay wages. This has to do with Chinese law and how things are done in China. For example, if wages are in arrears for 3 months, so if they owe the money for 3 months or more, they must be paid monthly even if the company needs to borrow money. If they cannot be paid on time, the government may arrest the business owners. About 3/4 of all protests recorded in China were linked to economic grievances, including workers demanding unpaid wages, homeowners facing stalled housing projects, and rural conflict related to land confiscation, according to Freedom House. Because when people purchase real estate in China, when you buy an apartment in one of these apartment buildings in China, sometimes they don't even finish the apartment. They just take the money, You get a mortgage, you start paying the mortgage, they're still constructing it. And then if you're lucky, the thing gets finished. But housing values have dropped so badly in China because the Ponzi scheme essentially of their real estate market exploded. It's just a complete disaster. And that's before all of this took place with the tariff war. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.